This episode of the World Soccer Talk podcast is presented by Sling. Coming up this weekend, we have all the title races from around Europe and around the world. Many of them are on Sling TV, including the Premier League and Liga 1. Hello and welcome to the World Soccer Talk podcast. On this episode, we discuss the just announced Champions Soccer Tour and what that means for soccer fans in the United States, as well as JJ Watt's campaign to grow Burnley FC in America, and US Soccer fills an executive slot to bring us one big step closer to a new head coach decision. My name is Christopher Harris, and joined today, it's my pleasure to bring on board Bob Williams, who is one of the top soccer writers in the United States. You might know him by his byline. He's worked for the Daily Telegraph, Sport Business, The Sun, and other publications. Bob, welcome to the pod.
Hi, Chris. Thanks very much for inviting me. I'm listened to your podcast for a long time now, so it's a thrill to be here with you right now.
Yeah, and it's perfect timing too, because in terms of what you cover, I mean, obviously the world of soccer, but I mean, historically speaking, a lot of business stories. So I know you and I have kind of crossed paths many times. You're always kind of, I mean, in addition to covering the soccer side, also kind of very fine-tuned into the business side. And let's start there too, because this is a massive story, right? Champions Soccer Tour, for those who don't know yet, this is a just announced new tour this summer that's coming to the United States, featuring 6 of the biggest European teams on the planet. So everyone from Barcelona, Real Madrid, Manchester United, Arsenal, Juventus, and AC Milan. Not only that, but those clubs combine for 31 European trophies. And the matches that they're going to be playing in the United States this summer from July 22nd through August 2nd will include host cities Dallas, Houston, Las Vegas, Los Angeles, Orlando, and San Francisco. So, Bob, taking that all in, I mean, what's your verdict on the announcement? What's your take on it?
Well, I think this is the European Soccer Tour in the States that we've all been waiting for. So far, there's been the Premier League Summer Series, which has Aston Villa, Brentford, Brighton, Chelsea, Fulham, Newcastle United. La Liga has also announced the tour with Atletico Madrid, Real Betis, Real Sociedad, and Sevilla. But now we get the big guns, right? We get AC Milan, Juventus, Barcelona, and Real Madrid. The highlight being an El Clasico at AT&T Stadium, which is home of the Dallas Cowboys, on Saturday, July 29th. I'm sure that's going to get attendance of 90,000, 100,000. I'm not quite sure what the capacity is. But this is just a hugely exciting moment for soccer fans here in the States, that we get another El Clasico, right? There was one last year at the Allegiant Stadium. That was the first iteration of the Soccer Champions Tour, which was put together by AEG. Now it seems the Soccer Champions Tour has been expanded in terms of the number of teams and also the backing that it has in terms of Sixth Street and Legends, and we can talk about that a bit later. But we had an El Clasico in the States in 2017 in Miami. We had one last year in Las Vegas. And now we've got one this year in Dallas. Could an annual El Clasico become a regular thing in the States? I think it could.
Yeah, it sure seems that way. And you mentioned too about the stadium sizes of some of those stadiums for El Clasico. And just running down the list too, I mean, this is gigantic stadiums, NFL stadiums, right? Levi Stadium has got a capacity of 68,000. The Rose Bowl, 89,000. SoFi Stadium, one of the best stadiums in the country, 70,000. Energy Stadium near Houston, 72,000. AT&T Stadium, 80,000 near Dallas. Allegiant Stadium, 65,000 in Vegas. Camping World Stadium in Orlando, 60,000. And then last but not least, LA Galaxy Stadium in Carson, 27,000, which is still, a considerable size. Yeah, this is, I think in some ways, Bob, this is kind of a, you mean we lost a lot of money during COVID. This is perfect timing for these clubs. They're probably thinking, okay, we're going to just bank millions on this tour. But also at the same time, too, the calendar has been kind for the men's side. So this summer, the only major tournament is the CONCACAF Gold Cup. Of course, you got the Women's World Cup on the other side. But there's no World Cup. There's no Euros. So this is a perfect opportunity for these teams to come over. And I think the other thing about this, too, is oftentimes whenever we make announcements about big clubs coming to America to play friendlies, preseason exhibition games, the first complaint is always, or the first thing that people say is like, well, it's just going to be their B team, or it's going to be the kind of the youth players. Most of the stars won't be there. On this one, I think, right, there's no reason that the stars couldn't be here. This is perfect preseason training going into the beginning of the new season. They're not going to have anything else other than the U20 World Cup, but by that point, it'll be over. So I think this is perfect timing for a lot of these clubs to come to this country. And this is going to be massive. This is going to be really big. The interesting thing about this, Bob, though, too, is, this is really going head-to-head with the Leagues Cup, the Liga MX and the MLS clubs. That one is running July 21st through August 19th. But how do you think those two will, do you think those two will really kind of almost cannibalize each other? Or is there a way for both the Leagues Cup and the Champions Soccer Tour to be successful kind of at the same time?
Well, I think the Leagues Cup is designed primarily to engage the Hispanic and Latino audience in the States. We know it's enormous in terms of the viewing figures for Mexican and Spanish leagues here. But obviously when you've got Real Madrid and Barcelona, that also caters to these kind of fans. I think that the biggest point may be the price. I'm sure a lot of people are going to be priced out of going to these games because they're expensive to put on, and I'm sure these clubs have been given millions of dollars to come here. So to recoup the cost, and also to hire these stadiums, the prices are going to be enormous. I think what will be interesting is if we have a deeper dive on the Leagues Cup's schedule in terms of, will these games sort of directly clash with these European friendlies, and then what happens then in terms of who watches what on TV and things like that. I think they could both coexist together, but ultimately, if you're a soccer fan in the States, what is going to capture your attention more? Is it Real Madrid against Barcelona, or is it one of the Sporting Kansas City against one of the lesser known Mexican clubs? I would say it's, by hands down, it's going to be all these European games. I guess we'll find out.
Yeah, it's interesting too, because last summer's Champions Soccer Tour did have Club America and Chivas on the schedule, playing European teams. And obviously this summer now, with those teams and all the other Liga MX teams, they'll be consumed with the Leagues Cup. And Bob, like you said too, as far as the European fans or fans of European soccer, they'll be kind of hooked into watching these Champions Soccer Tour games. So I think where the split could be is those MLS fans, where some of those MLS fans, if they're a fan of, I don't know, LA Galaxy, or if it's any of the teams kind of on the in the Midwest or on the West Coast, do you, with your dollars that you have, are you like, okay, do I go see LA Galaxy against one of the Liga MX clubs, or do I go to watch Juventus against AC Milan or something like that? So I think for them those decisions will be tough ones, and they may go with the MLS Leagues Cup one. Just to run through the fixtures, actually. So Barcelona against Juventus at Levi's Stadium, Real Madrid against Milan at the Rose Bowl, which you can just imagine that's going to be just full of Real Madrid fans there. Arsenal against Barcelona at SoFi, which that's enticing too. Real Madrid against Manchester United at the Energy Stadium in Houston. Juventus against Milan at Dignity Health Sports Park in Carson. So there you have the Serie A game there at at the LA Galaxy Stadium. Barcelona against Real Madrid, like you mentioned, AT&T Stadium in Texas. Milan against Barcelona, Allegiant Stadium, and then Juventus against Real Madrid, closing it out at Camping World in Orlando. So, I mean, all of those games on
they're all
paper,
great games, aren't they? You can't pick one to say that's just okay. They're all amazing.
Yeah, other than El Clasico, which is the one that stands out. I mean, all of them. It's hard to resist if you were in that area, and we've seen it too. I mean, nationally, you have people flying across the country to go to these games. Yeah, the ticket prices are going to be interesting to see what those are in terms of what they're priced at. But we've seen too, even for the El Clasico in Miami in previous years, there were people from around the country and actually from the continent, actually from South America, from North America, coming to this game because it was a destination game. It was really built up to be kind of a massive game of it's a friendly, but still it's an opportunity for people on this part of the hemisphere to actually see these players and these teams in person. So it's this is going to be a huge undertaking. And of course too, you've got some other tours too. You have the Manchester United against Dortmund playing a friendly, and then you have Wrexham coming, right? Wrexham's playing a few games there too, outside of obviously the Champions Soccer Tour.
Yeah, and what can you expect? There's also a lot of events around the games, right? They put on lots of activations for their sponsors. They meet fans and things like that.
Yeah,
it's going to be a huge endeavor. And I think a bit like the Formula One races here, it's a place to see and be seen. So you can expect, like the top athletes in North America and other celebrities will come to these games because they know it's the place to be.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's something you could say from the International Champions Cup and previous tournaments. I don't think they've maxed that out as much as they could. What do you know about Legends, Bob, and kind of what they could possibly provide in terms of packages or kind of offerings kind of off the pitch to entice people to come in? I'm sure at a pretty penny, but what type of things they usually put together?
Well, the interesting thing about this tour is that it's been put together by Sixth Street, Legends, and AEG. Last year, as I said, it was just AEG. So Sixth Street, which is a private equity firm, already has relationships with Real Madrid and Barcelona. And Legends does as well. They're trying to help out these clubs in terms of what they're doing with their stadium redesigns in Europe and just helping them promote their merchandise and events. So having just the wealth of knowledge and the structural support from all these leading companies is really going to help make it a really professional event. And I think it's just going to be great for fans.
Yeah, the last point on this one too about the Soccer Champions Tour is television. Yes. And Leagues Cup, all of the games are going to be on MLS Season Pass in English, and then select games on Univision and Tudo. Obviously, it'll be the big games with the big Liga MX clubs. Any thoughts about where this could head to television or to linear?
I think the two obvious choices are ESPN and CBS, right? ESPN already has La Liga. CBS has Serie A, and we have clubs from both these leagues here. So I think ESPN really needs to up its game a little bit in terms of some of its soccer rights, having lost quite a bit. But I would be happy with either ESPN or CBS. Yeah,
no, that's a good point. Good analysis there, because this is a danger though for MLS and for Liga MX, because you look at Leagues Cup and I can guarantee that the Liga MX fans will be really, really into this, right? They're going to watch the games on Univision or Tudo, and some of them may subscribe to MLS Season Pass to see some of those other games. And then, but then if you have all of these, there's 8 games, 6 teams from the Soccer Champions Tour, the biggest clubs in the world, many of them, on television, more accessible, right? Maybe it's on ESPN, ESPN Plus, ESPN2, as well as perhaps CBS and Paramount Plus or the CBS Sports Golazo network. Those are a lot more accessible and are going to reach a greater audience. So for Major League Soccer, I think that's the big worry, is where do those MLS fans go? Again, not just in the ticket prices and are they buying the tickets, But are they subscribing to the services to MLS Season Pass really to really watch these games from the League's Cup? So yeah, we'll have to look at the schedule closer in the coming days to see how much of it is head to head. But it's certainly something that I think Major League Soccer would be concerned about, just by the sheer size of these teams and the fan bases that they have, is it could split the audience.
Right, and will the timing perhaps, you mentioned it would be in the evening just because of the weather, but again, they have to cater to their fans, in Europe and overseas as well. So that's something to consider as well.
Yeah. It's interesting too, because actually, you look at the schedule, you look at the map where these Champions Soccer Tour games are being played, and for the most part, it's Texas, California, and then you've got a game in Florida and a game in Nevada. So it's mostly Pacific, West Coast or Texas. So it'd be different if Major League Soccer looked at this and said, okay, well, it's all East Coast games, and most of the Leagues Cup games, the big games with Club America and Chivas and Seattle Sounders and LAFC are on the West Coast. So yeah, timing, and they haven't released the actual kickoff times yet for these games for the Champions Soccer Tour. The timing, yeah, it could be head to head, or they could try to figure out a way to complement each other, so that maybe there's one game in the early afternoon for the Champions Soccer Tour, and then that evening in the same city in Los Angeles, perhaps, that there's a game from the Leagues Cup where it's kind of a 7:30 kickoff or a 9:30 kickoff, whatever it may be. So fans, if they wanted to, if they did have enough money, they could go to both games, but also they're not going to really cannibalize the audience in terms of who's going to be watching. But yeah, this is fascinating stuff.
Yeah, and so I was just looking at the stadiums for the original Soccer Champions Tour last year. The games were at Allegiant Stadium, Oracle Park, Cotton Bowl Stadium in Dallas, and the Rose Bowl Stadium. So similarly, on the West Coast, in that area, maybe they have like a multi-year deal with these stadiums that they're going to come every year. So that could be part of it too.
Yeah. It's going to be, it's going to make July and August really interesting in terms of, even if you can't go to the games, being able to watch a lot of these games, whether it's through MLS Season Pass for Leagues Cup, and possibly ESPN or CBS or maybe Fox, who knows, having some of these games. I would imagine that these games would get a hefty amount in rights fees. And I'm sure they're going to be going to international markets too, and presenting this in Europe and trying to see who actually bids for the rights to these games overseas too.
Yeah, there's so much synergy, more than ever, between European sports teams and leagues and the States, and it's only going to continue. So I'm pretty sure it feels like the Soccer Champions Tour is like could be the dominant new force in the European summer tours of the States. It was the International Champions Cup, that's obviously gone, and now we have two other tours. Relevant sports are still involved with La Liga, but it feels like with the clubs that they have and the weight behind them with Sixth Street and AEG and Legends, that the Soccer Champions Tour could become, the new dominant force. And it says in the press release that they're also planning women's events and youth team events as well. Yeah, that would be amazing to see if there'd be a women's El Clasico in the States. I think that would be amazing.
Yeah, and I'm sure they've looked at previous tours too and learned from International Champions Cup in the latter years of them doing that tournament. They also had some women's games, I believe, and some of the youth might have had a youth tournament or different things. So I'm sure a lot of these clubs have learned a lot from those days, as well as AEG looking at those events and thinking, okay, if we put something on like this, how could we make it even better than what it was in the past? So speaking of the past, but now looking to the future, from the past, Burnley FC is one of the founding members of the Football League from 1888, and now they're promoted to the Premier League, featuring an American investor. But most recently, JJ Watt and his wife have invested in Burnley FC. And for anyone on social media or at worldsoccertalk.com, you may have seen kind of an article about JJ Watt's first impressions of Burnley and he went to the town in Lancashire and did a pub crawl. He went from pub to pub, kind of experiencing the local culture, going to the game at Turf Moor, being there as part of the championship trophy presentation, and actually lifting the trophy. What I find interesting about this too is that JJ Watt has said publicly that he's spoken to Rob McElhenney about Wrexham FC and trading some tips back and forth and talking about it. Obviously, I think to me, Burnley and Wrexham are not competitors; they're in completely different leagues. But Bob, what do you think? What do you think in terms of Burnley FC and what JJ Watt's trying to do? Could he replicate in any ways or improve the popularity of Burnley in the States, where perhaps Wrexham may not have been able to do in certain ways?
Well, I think the primary factor in increasing Burnley's presence in the States is simply the fact that they're in the Premier League and they're going to be on NBC Sports every week. And if they stay in the Premier League for a number of years, that's how you get to know the club, the players, the coaches, the stadium, the town. That does more than anything than what JJ Watt can do. But where he can help is that I think he is the friendly face of the ownership. The ownership is ALK Capital. It just sounds a bit grubby in a way that is the name of the ownership. It's private equity. It's soulless, and he's the friendly face. He's so popular, JJ Watt, and I think he can do a lot along with his wife in just terms of doing the similar things that Ryan Reynolds and Rob McElhenney have done, in that just create really great content and hang out with fans and be the friendly face and just provide a helpful bridge between the fans and the American ownership. To what extent he can do what Ryan Reynolds has done, who's clearly a genius as a businessman and in content creation, I think it's sort of a bit limited in terms of what he can do on that front, but he's a great addition to the ownership group. There's no doubt about that.
Do you think in some ways, though, with JJ Watt being a NFL legend, that there's an opportunity there to maybe, communicate with his followers, but also people that pay attention to JJ Watt from an NFL specific kind of area where, say, Rob McElhenney, comedian, actor, writer, Ryan Reynolds, Hollywood star, may not connect as well with an NFL audience. So, I'm sure there's a lot of new soccer fans out there, or soccer fans that haven't found a team yet. And JJ Watt, perhaps as a NFL legend, could perhaps kind of try to point people in the direction of Burnley and try to build a fan base that way, where Rob and Ryan couldn't, perhaps.
It sounds like a great idea in theory, but I'm not quite sure if you're a hardcore Cardinals fan that suddenly you're going to become interested in Burnley just because JJ Watt is posting things on his social media. Mm-hmm. I just can't see that happening. But obviously, there's just more opportunity for Burnley to come to the States, and he can help out that way, and he can go to England. But I don't know if you saw that he did an interview with The Athletic this week, and I'm just going to read one of his quotes. He says, "What I'm going to do is help with marketing, with brand recognition, commercial aspects, the entire American audience, both fans and investors, to try to do my part to grow the Burnley brand and bring global eyes to help tell their story, because this place is incredible. I've been here twice, but the people, the town, the tradition, the history, the world should know about Burnley." And he can help in that respect. But he can move the needle a little bit, but I don't think it's going to be fundamental. I think that's the point I'm trying to make.
Yeah, I think the key thing is that a documentary, right, or a series, or something that goes beyond that, where we've seen Welcome to Wrexham and how well that's done, but that was able to tell the story so much better than social media or interviews or podcasts or anything else was able to do. So maybe JJ Watt, with his connections in the States, and I'm sure other broadcasters probably thinking like, hey, well, can we have a program that's as good as Welcome to Wrexham, or as successful, and maybe it's about Burnley. So that'd be my recommendation, is trying to figure out an authentic, really well done production wise in terms of Welcome to Wrexham, similar to that, but because Burnley does have a good story to tell, right? The team that being up and down the divisions from a kind of a Lancashire industrial town, kind of a very kind of mill workers, and a lot of roots in soccer, and with Vincent Kompany too as manager, one of the best managers, up and coming managers in the UK. So maybe perhaps, right? Maybe Netflix or something like that.
Yeah, I hope so. I mean, there are so many soccer documentaries out there, docuseries. I'm sure there's going to be so many more, but I don't know. Do you think just adding another to the mix is helpful for Burnley? What do you think?
I think if it's well done. I agree with you. There's so many, and I'm burnt out. Like I
can't watch them all.
I know, and I get press releases like maybe 1 or 2 a week. Like, hey, this is new soccer series coming out, and I think all of them I give a chance, or at least I watch the trailer. But JJ Watt would be something different. Would be I don't know his story as well. So coming from a UK perspective, this is something from a British perspective. Probably there'll be a lot of people kind of curious about his story, learning more about what he's done from in his career as an athlete, or and now a business person. So from that angle, from the UK side, I'd be interested, and then from the US side, in terms of for people learning more about Burnley and what makes them different. Yeah, I'd give it a chance. And if it was as well done as Welcome to Wrexham, with the characters and the community and kind of everything that Welcome to Wrexham has done, I'd watch it. But yeah, I would be skeptical at first after having seen so many documentaries, and there's more and more coming out. It's just, there's always stuff happening. It's a little bit too much, I think. I agree.
Yeah, I think what will just be interesting is just how much time JJ Watt will spend in England going to games. Because, one of the heartening things about Ryan Reynolds and Rob McElhenney is that they were in Wrexham a lot, and not just Wrexham, they were going to all the away games as well for an extended period of weeks as they were building towards promotion. So it would be, I think, quite important for him that there's not just like an immediate publicity push, which there is now, but when the season starts again in August, September, that he's there a lot, and he's hanging out with fans and things like that. Again, I don't know what his other business interests are, or how much time he wants to spend away, because from his wife, and I think they just had a child, or she's pregnant. I'm not quite sure, but that would be a factor.
Yeah, and he has a foundation. I know that he runs. Ideally, it'd be great to see Burnley over here this summer. A Burnley against Wrexham friendly someplace. JJ Watt, Ryan Reynolds, and Rob McElhenney kind of on the sidelines, and then seeing those two teams play, helping each other out a bit in terms of promotion. But maybe it's a little bit too late right now in terms of summer planning. But I think that's something that would be definitely interesting for sure. So Bob, last but not least, we want to talk about Oguchi Onyewu, the former defender of the US men's national team, was hired this week by the US Soccer Federation as vice president of sporting, a newly created role the government body said is not a replacement for Brian McBride. And USSF says that this is Oguchi Onweyu's role will be reporting to Matt Crocker, who starts as sporting director on August 2nd, and they'll assist in the hiring of a men's national team coach. And then Onyewu will work with the men's and women's national team at all levels, and will help manage relationships with clubs and leagues. So, Bob, in your career, kind of in terms of whether it's watching on television or seeing her as a player, or perhaps maybe interviewing opportunities, etc., what are your thoughts about Oguchi Onyewu and the actual decision to go ahead and hire him as the vice president of sporting?
I have to say I don't know too much about him as an individual, but I just wonders, just bringing in former US soccer players into the system, while it's understandable, it feels like there's a bit of a closed shop in the US Soccer Federation in terms of who they're bringing in and the relationships that they have and what they deal with. And I think Matt Crocker is a great example of bringing in someone from the outside who can have independent, objective viewpoint on this. There are seemingly so many different executives in the US Soccer Federation doing different things, and it's just quite hard to understand what they all do.
Yeah, it's and also this is a new role, right? This is a vice president of sporting, so it's a newly created role inside US Soccer Federation. For me personally, I don't think I've met Oguchi, but I have seen him quite a few times as a player, but also on CBS Sports. He was on their coverage of, I think it was the CONCACAF Nations League, and also he was on Bleacher Report when he did some of the analysis in the studio for the Champions League. And from everything that I know about him and everything that I've seen, he seems really honest. He seems like really a great kind of observer of the game. Everything that he said in terms of his analysis was really, really well done. And actually, when he was on at Turner Sports for Champions League coverage, I thought he was one of the best analysts that they had. But they decided to go, I think, with a different crew and had Carlos Bocanegra, Stu Holden, and Steve Nash as kind of more the people that they were going to. So yeah, but going back to what you said, Bob, too, I think this feels like a little bit of a compromise too, where maybe Oguchi can help Matt Crocker and talk about how the US system is different and kind of tie him into that, so he knows, but knows how the system works, and maybe help guide him a little bit, and vice versa. Matt Crocker, given his kind of analysis and input, and in terms of what he does, hopefully the two of them can work together really, really well to make that decision to finally hire that US men's national team coach. Hopefully, maybe by September, perhaps, we'll actually have a name finally. And then, Bob, before we let you go, so where can listeners who may not be as familiar with your byline and your name, where can listeners go ahead and read your coverage, and also where can they follow you on social media?
Well, I'm on Twitter, not quite as much as I used to be, but I'm on Twitter at WilliamsBob75. I'm also on LinkedIn, and you can see some of my articles at The Sun as well, that's where I'm writing at the moment.
Excellent. Well, Bob, thank you so much for coming on the show. We really appreciate it. Some great analysis and feedback on some of these big stories, and all the best.
Thanks very much. Thanks for having me.
But we're not done yet. We have the listener mailbag, and again, lots of feedback from you listeners, which we really appreciate. Kartik will be back early next week, and thanks to Bob Williams for coming on the show to talk about Champions Soccer Tour plus much more. Okay, so Kevin says, I may be in the minority, but I like the games are on Saturday. I now know when the Revs are playing. Now I know the start time. Before I didn't know when they were playing, so it made it for me personally. I just wish they would start a little earlier, like 4 or 5 p.m. Eastern time. Scott says it's pretty simple. I'm not going to give $15 to MLS for games, only when I can subscribe to Paramount Plus and Peacock for $5 a month and get tons more. ESPN Plus, which has La Liga, Bundesliga, and games from other European nations, along with hundreds of other sports, is less than the MLS package. The meaningless regular season follows the American sports model, where only the playoffs matter, but the average American sports fan doesn't watch soccer and won't be attracted. Hardcore soccer fans like myself prefer the European model, with a true champion and relegation. MLS pretty much has turned away their most likely fans while failing to attract the average American sports fan, while making their product unaffordable to watch. Juan Gonzalez says, as for the conspiracy theory of Apple using MLS as a showcase, leagues not only look at technology, but money paid for the rights and the commitment. If Apple leaves the deal midway, that's not a good sign for any partner. Snowman says, I love the podcasts and have 2 issues with your comments. First, it is easy for Chris to say, make Saturday night a soccer night. Your subscription fees are probably paid by the business, and you make your living covering soccer. those of us in the real world have families and spouses who like to do other things on a Saturday night, like eat out, go to the movies, or other entertainment, and especially do the one thing that couples do best. Can you imagine this conversation to my wife? Do you want to spend a little bit, my wife says, do you want to spend a little close time with me Saturday night? I say, I love you, honey, but Saturday night is soccer night. I love soccer, but love my marriage more. If I can only manage 1 or 2 free Saturday nights a month, there is no value in MLS Season Pass. Next, you bemoaned the lack of hype and excitement for big games during the season. The sad fact is that there are no big games in MLS regular season to hype. Who cares who wins any particular game if almost all teams make the playoff and there is no relegation? Jonathan Rapley says some great points on this pod. I do think the league has a scheduling issue. They are trying to attract a younger audience, especially going to only streaming, but most people in their 20s are not sitting at home on a Saturday night. I'm surprised they have not spread the games out over the weekend to try and get people invested on a Saturday night or a Friday night, and understand that I understand that MLS 360 is a big part, but the Premier League goal zone has worked in the past with only 3 games going at the same time with no issues for content. So yeah, Jonathan, yeah, good points there. MLS 360, they could change it, right? And they could make it so it's throughout the weekend rather than from the 7:30 Eastern time till about midnight, kind of the 4.5 to 5 hours of coverage is spread it out. It's going to cost more, probably in terms of production costs and having the staff go through the weekend and changing different personnel up to keep it fresh. But that's certainly an idea worth considering. All right, next up is Ryan Senior. MLS Season Pass sucks. It's expensive, glitchy, and I honestly miss my local broadcast. We had pre-game, post-game, and halftime interviews with the players and coach, plus the cost is too much, and I already pay for Apple TV+. This is MLS, not the Premier League. And then lastly, about MLS Season Pass, the White Eagle says, I had Galaxy season tickets for 10 years. Dropped them because I finally became exhausted by their putting politics over performance. Once Don Garber caved to Antifa, I stopped watching and have never looked back. Angels games are a much better game day experience anyway. Zachariah wants to talk about promotion and relegation. I was listening to your talk about improving the format of Major League Soccer. While I agree that promotion and relegation would add stakes to the league, if it involves USL, that is sadly a non-starter because A, they would require owners who spent millions on teams to kick themselves out of a league they spent money to get into because of the closed format, and B, USL doesn't even have promotion and relegation. I feel the only solution would be a promotion relegation format within MLS. Instead of an East and West conference, you have a Premier Conference from which you can qualify for MLS playoffs. If you reach the top 4 in a Championship Conference, you get relegated into and can't qualify for MLS playoffs. Everyone plays each other once and everyone in their conference twice. In the current setup, you would have 15 in the Premier Conference and 14 in the Championship Conference. End of the season, you would have MLS playoffs and promotion playoffs. It is a feasible way to do for MLS to do promotion and relegation without having to do promotion and relegation. Just a thought. So yeah, I mean, in terms of promotion and relegation, Zachariah and other listeners, I honestly don't think that MLS will ever do it. I don't think that they would ever do a League One and a League Two and then have some of the smaller teams work their way up to MLS. Now, if NFL did it overnight and NFL came out and said, okay, we're going to have promotion and relegation and we're going to have two different, I mean, they have the conferences that they have now, but we're going to have a Division 2 NFL and we're going to promote teams up and down. That would never happen. And many of the executives and owners within MLS are NFL or former NFL executives. So that's what they're going after is the NFL model. And the NFL model is, just the top teams in those top cities, those big cities, and that's it. And that's where they make the money. So I don't see promotion and relegation ever working within MLS. However, US soccer needs to take control of the situation to figure out what's best, not for Major League Soccer, but what's best for the sport in this country. So maybe it's creating a promotion and relegation system outside of Major League Soccer, or maybe it's coming up with some other solution that would actually work. But I don't see MLS doing it. I don't see them agreeing to it. And if US soccer did come in, or FIFA came in, which is not going to happen anytime soon, and said, hey guys, you guys need to come up with a promotion relegation system, I can guarantee you MLS would be going to the courts and getting the lawyers involved and trying to stop that from happening. So it needs to happen from above, either through the court systems or through US soccer or through FIFA. And even then, it may not happen. So my take is that promotion and relegation would make Major League Soccer better. However, it wouldn't fix things overnight. It would give us more reasons to watch. But it is a factor. I mean, it's a factor in whether or not people will watch MLS, if it has it or not. So if it doesn't have it, maybe it's just MLS says, you know what? We've tried doing a streaming solution that's available globally. We were on national television. We were on local television. Maybe kind of our forte, maybe what we do best is that local game experience. And then the national TV coverage and the international TV coverage, I mean, not what we anticipated it being. It's still out there, still available, but I mean, it is what it is. And then hyper-focus on the local level in terms of, you know, bringing new players through the system, making more money, keeping the billionaires happy. And for the fans, going to the stadium, having a great experience, and feeling that they're part of something, which is true. I mean, it's at the game experience for a lot of MLS teams. It's a great experience. All right, listeners, thank you so much for your comments and feedback. If you want to get in touch with us, if you have any questions of your own or feedback or observations, let us know. We'd love to hear from you. There's a few different ways you can reach out to us. First of all, you can go to the website, worldsoccertalk.com, and then click on podcast in the navigation and leave your comments in the most recent episode. Or you can send me an email. It goes to web@worldsoccertalk.com. You can reach out to us on Facebook, facebook.com/worldsoccertalk, and on Twitter @worldsoccertalk. You can tweet us there. If you want to, you can also leave a voicemail. I do have a voicemail that's I need to maybe next episode I'll go ahead and play that from one of our listeners, but you can leave a voicemail too, which is 561-247-4625. And on behalf of World Soccer Talk, Bob Williams, who is our special guest this week, and Kartik Krishnaiyer, and many others working at World Soccer Talk, thank you for listening, and enjoy your